Okay. Hello everyone. Welcome to the Nandip Academy. I guess there was some technical glitch. So here we are taking the important issues for upcoming UPSC Mains 2024 exam, and we are trying to cover some relevant issues which may appear in your UPSC Mains 2024 examination. Even if directly we do not see any question, we are seeing a likely possibility that you can use this particular content in your answers or even in your essay. So that is our approach. Now, when we approach these issues, let us understand how we are picking up these issues. So my method is I'm going through PYQs, and as I move through these PYQs, I am trying to understand what relevant questions can appear from here onwards. Now, there is a typical theme on which UPSC tends to ask questions. So here I have these couple of questions on urban areas in India where I can see a typical theme emerging. Now, based on these questions, I have gone through this year's phenomena throughout the country or all throughout the world, and we find that in the urban areas of the world or even in India, we have typical climatic patterns emerging. Let us take example. So in last few months, we have seen that cities such as Chennai, Delhi, or even some other continental cities have experienced extreme heat waves or extreme temperatures. And that is where the idea of urban climate or urban microclimate emerges. Now, these urban areas are not just witnessing the idea of urban heat island effect, but they are also experiencing severe pollution problem, as well as we have the problem of cloud bursts in these particular areas. And picking up all these three themes, stitching them well, we get a particular topic, that is urban microclimate. Now, when we say urban microclimate, I am expecting these type of questions. What questions or what kind of questions I can have? Let us understand. So I can have a question: the future of urban planning lies in understanding and managing urban microclimates. Critically analyze this statement, providing examples and case studies to support your arguments. Other than that, I can also have one more question. Here I am talking about the urban areas which are lying in the interior of the continent versus areas which are lying on the coastal areas, and they have or they will tend to have uniqueness of their own climatic patterns. So these are the kind of questions I am expecting. If you try to answer this particular question, you get all the points for the given topic. Now, let us understand, when I say urban microclimate, what I am looking forward to. If I say urban microclimate, I can have one specific phenomena happening in urban areas, that is urban heat island. Then other than urban heat island, I have something called as urban wind patterns which are emerging. But most importantly, I have a phenomena that is urban cloudburst. Fine. So in this particular lecture, we will be focusing on the issue of urban heat island along with urban wind pattern. And in next lecture separately, we will be concentrating on the issue of urban cloudburst. Now, let us focus what microclimatic characters we witness in this urban area. The first microclimatic character I have in urban area is the urban heat island effect. Now, what cities are experiencing? Cities are experiencing a significantly warmer temperature or higher temperature than their surrounding areas, right? Now, this is the result of human activities and urban development. So what do we find? These urban areas tend to have around 10 to 12 degrees higher temperature than their surrounding rural areas, which is the effect of the higher albedo in these particular areas. So if you look at the urban landscape, what do you find? These urban landscapes now have a built up area, a lot of built up area is there, which is specifically is of either concrete or of asphalt. At the same time, we find that in these urban areas, deforestation has taken place along with shrinking water bodies or shrinking reservoirs of water. All these particular phenomena coupled with human activities such as pollution and other emissions, we have an effect called as urban heat island effect. Fine. So that is the first phenomena which is taking place in urban areas. Other than this phenomena, we have one more phenomena, that is altered precipitation patterns. So what I have, short bursts of intense rainfall, right? I also have told you that there is a phenomenon of cloudburst which is taking place in urban areas. So that can be categorized as altered precipitation patterns. Now, in these altered precipitation patterns, I have one more phenomenon. Let us understand what you are supposed to write when it comes to precipitation. So I can have a cloudburst like event, and a couple of days ago I had one article appearing in Down to Earth where it said that if I have this particular urban area, not all the urban area is going to experience same type of precipitation. So typically there was example of Delhi, which same can be seen in rest of the countries or rest of the urban areas of the countries. So what I have, not all districts or all areas of any given urban settlement is experiencing same type of precipitation. So some areas will remain dry, right, and some areas will be extremely wet. So this kind of variability is also seen. Okay, so that is something we need to address when it comes to the point of precipitation. So that is what we are suggesting when it comes to altered precipitation pattern. Along with that, we have modified wind patterns. Now, why we have modified wind patterns? It is the result of building acting as obstacles. We already have removed all the natural vegetation from this particular area. We have already reduced all these water bodies to the land, and along with that we have tall towering building which is altering the particular wind pattern. Now there is the problem of wind circulation which is taking place in this particular area, and if there is a problem of wind circulation in this particular area, we observe two phenomena. There is one phenomena that pollution tend to get accumulate in certain pockets of these particular cities. Other than that, other part of the cities are experiencing high speed winds. So the speed of wind in urban areas is being observed higher as compared to surrounding rural areas, and these are the patterns which are emerging when it comes to modified wind patterns. Other than that, these areas will tend to have lower humidity. So this is a typical urban microclimate character we have to write when it comes to urban microclimate. Let's move on to the parts. What are the factors which are driving these microclimatic patterns? So when it comes to factors driving microclimatic patterns, I have modification of urban landscape, that is well understood. So we already have talked about concrete, we have talked about asphalts, which are contributing to the urban heat island effect. Other than that, we have the release of anthropogenic heat from vehicles, from buildings and other industrial and commercial activities. We have release of anthropogenic heat which is resulting into the urban heat island effect. Also, we have altered wind flow and reduced ventilation. We have already discussed this particular part. There is a problem of water cycle because we have already reduced these water bodies. So reduction in water bodies has also resulted in altered precipitation or the pattern of precipitation in these particular regions. Other than that, the air pollution is also a major contributory factor which is resulting into urban microclimates or urban climate. So these are the factors which are resulting into urban climates. Now we will focus on the urban heat island effect and we will see how this particular effect can be mitigated. So when it comes to urban heat island effect, we already know what do we mean by urban heat island. So this is the particular urban area which is experiencing higher temperature as compared to surrounding areas. So when you are writing an answer on urban heat island effect, I am expecting that you are making this diagram and you are presenting that in urban areas we have a higher temperature. Also mention that this temperature can be 20 to 12 degrees Celsius higher as compared to surrounding areas. Now we have various examples. You can quote examples from this year itself. Take example of Delhi, take example of Chennai, where we have witnessed higher temperatures as compared to rest of the surrounding areas, and all these areas have experienced severe heat waves. So there was an article in the Hindu, right, and that article dissected all the parameters. It discussed all the parameters of urban heat island effect which was taking place in these particular areas. Now what mitigation strategies can be implemented when it comes to urban heat island effect? When it comes to causes of urban heat island effect, already we have talked about a lot of causes which are causing urban heat island effect. So I'm hoping that you are able to pick up the causes. Now when it comes to mitigation strategies, In mitigation, we can talk about increasing green cover. Then we can talk about energy efficient practices. Other than that, we have to reduce the albedo of these particular areas. How do we reduce albedo? We should be using whiter surfaces, right? So buildings must be painted whited. All public areas can be painted white. Along with that, I can also have increased number of water bodies in this particular area. If I have a water body situated in a particular geographical urban settlement, I can have cooling effect from this water body, and that is how I am expecting the temperature of that particular urban settlement to go down. So these are some efforts, some initiatives which needs to be taken to reduce temperature of urban areas. Now there is a wonderful case study. You can quote this case study or you can write this case study, which is from Singapore. So in Singapore, we have very high urban heat island effect, and to cope up with this particular phenomena, Singapore has developed a three-pronged strategy. So what Singapore is doing? So Singapore is trying to optimize wind flow, right? So how do we optimize wind flow, or why we are targeting wind flow in this particular case? So the reason is, if we have tall buildings which are situated in a particular center of a city, it results into obstructed wind flow. When there is wind flow which is obstructed, heat will accumulate in certain pockets, and as heat accumulates in certain pockets, I will have higher urban heat island effect. So what Singapore is doing? Singapore is having a smart urban planning which will take into account this particular wind flow, and it will make sure that heat does not accumulate in the various pockets of the city. Other than that, Singapore is also using cool paints, green roofs, and whiter walls, which will help reducing the temperature. Also, we have to cut the emissions. So Singapore is also working on the control of emissions, and it is practicing energy efficient practices for the same. So they are also developing something called as green building, right? If you want to go in the details of this particular part, what Singapore is doing, so Singapore has a lot of greenery in the city itself, which is very planned. Along with that, the cities or the skyscrapers which are present in these urban areas, they also have some green patches, and that is how the green cover is being increased, which will result into lower temperature. So this is the approach which has been introduced by Singapore. So there are key initiatives which you can quote. So I have one initiative, that is Green Plan 2030, where we are expecting to increase green spaces in Singapore. And then there is Singapore is having a lush scheme which incentivizes vertical greenery on buildings. Other than that, they are using cool paints as a pilot project. So that is how Singapore is approaching to the problem of urban heat island effect. Fine. So that is about urban heat island effect. So next part of this particular topic will be urban cloudburst. So we will discuss urban cloudburst in our upcoming session, and we will also see what type of questions can be asked on the issue of urban cloudburst. So thank you everyone. We'll see you in next lecture.